This is going to be an extensive video on Resto Druid. It is not just a guide, but a compendium of information that should contain all you need to know. Each section starts with basic information, eventually developing into weird min-maxing techniques. We'll cover talents, rotation on both healing and DPS, macros, parsing, itemization, mana management, and methods of improvement. We'll be mostly focusing on this season 11.2. However, Blizzard starts making fewer and fewer gameplay changes between seasons. If any major modifications will appear, they will be noted in the pinned comment. And should too many things change, I'll post a new video entirely, and this one will be marked as old. Another thing to note is that I have been playing Restoration for over 5 years, and the class has had minor overall changes, since it is one of the better designed specs. This, however, leads to a slow uptake of the community in rotation changes, and major misconceptions preached as gospel. But enough wasting time, let's dive in. Talents. These are the generally agreed upon talents used in Raid and Mythic Plus. The import code is in the pinned comment. However, before moving on, I would like to cover some oddities and talent options and rotations. And mind you, even the top 5 Resto Druids in the previous season did not run the same talents. In Mythic Plus, there is a debate over whether Tiger Dash or Wild Charge is better. Dash giving better mobility, but costing a GCD, is usually considered worse. But it mostly comes down to personal preference. Then there is Ursine Vigor versus improved Stampeding Roar. In hierarchies, Vigor becomes mandatory, where one-shots become frequent and apparent. On the right side of the tree, the choice is between Renewing Surge and Inner Peace. Recent buffs to Tranquility have changed perspectives, and the community is unsure of which one would be better. Current sentiment is that Inner Peace is better, but expect this to change throughout the season with no general consensus. There's also the Heart of the Wild builds, which, while proven by inhuman players like Vickman to function in the highest of keys, these require too much coordination and group effort to properly function. Raid talents. These are the base talents, and this is what seems to be played once tier sets come into play. Yeah, they buffed Wild Stalker way too much. You may trade Unstoppable Growth for improved Ironbark and Renewing Surge if your tank presents medical challenges. Also, Heart of the Wild may be swapped for Stampeding Roar, depending whether the DPS check is required or not, as 99% of guilds really do not care about healer damage. Some of you might be weirded out by the cat form choices instead of the big bird. I promise you this will be explained in the rotation section. It will make sense. This is the way to play Resto Druid. Mythic Plus rotation. The difficulty here comes mostly with predicting damage spikes and properly applying HOTS before the damage comes. A fact only made more difficult when considering doing damage requires entering cat form. mPlus doesn't really have a rotation, but there are some checks. Ensure you have rejuvenations running on your party before the damage comes, and keep up your 2 life blooms and your efflorescence. Just as the damage comes, Swiftment into Wild Growth or Regrowth, depending whether this is AoE damage or not, and then just spam regrowths alongside of GCT Grove Guardians. Nature's Swiftness is a great, recently buffed panic button that should not be underestimated. With Soul of the Forest talent on Regrowth, this is a budget lay on hands full heal. With the way Tranquility has been buffed, it should be a great get out of jail free card at any point in time with no pre-hot requirements. Convoke, on the other hand, is to be used just after the Wild Growth cast should you deem it necessary. Otherwise, it is a good damage source, preferable for single target healing. As for actual damage rotations, we have good single target, decent cleave, and bad AoE. In single or cleave, ensure your rake and rip are on target at all times, and fill in with shred and ferocious bites. Nature's Vigil will not be cast with Flourish here, so remember to press it before an intense healing moment. Incapacitating Roar, Vortex Typhoon combos, and your raid buff are all great utility and should be utilized. There is also a low cooldown interrupt that should be used, as well as a de-enrage in Soothe, both of which should take priority over healing. As for the target of your symbiotic relationship, depends mostly on the quality of your tank. If you feel your tank is capable enough, then you may change it to the squishiest DPS. Raid healing rotation. Well, this one is weirder for healers, especially for Resto. We do not have an exact and precise series of spells, but more of a checklist. We call periods when no damage is incoming, or the calm before the storm, ramps, while the period when we dump our mana to maximize output during boss damage, we call burn. And by we, I mean me, because no one seems to have a name for the burn phase. During the ramps, we just spam rejuvenation on everyone, regardless of health, due to nurturing dormancy, while maintaining a set of spells on cooldown: Efflorescence, Life Bloom, Swiftmend, and Wild Growth. Efflorescence has some issues if the group moves too much, but it is generally worth reapplying every time it expires. Life Bloom needs to always be on the tank, alongside with 2 rejuvenations, and then extended constantly by Swiftmend. During the burn phase, as always, spam regrowths. As for cooldowns, utilize them as often as your raid leader allows you to. Convoke should be paired with Flourish and preceded by a Swiftmend and Wild Growth. Also, there is a generally agreed upon rule that this combo should not be initiated before 12 rejuvenations are present, as to maximize abundance. However, the more, the better.
Nice.
Tranquility should also be cast before a Swiftmend and Wild Growth, and then followed by another set due to Dream State. Also, due to this talent, Tranquility should not, under any circumstance, be cast with less than 25 seconds of cooldown left on Convoke or Flourish. Now comes what is probably the most controversial part of this video. For years on end, Druids have been used to cast Swiftmend into Wild Growth due to Soul of the Forest. That is no longer optimal in a raid scenario. The talent has been repeatedly nerfed, and new additions and procs have changed this. Let's do some math. In a 30 seconds window, you may fill 2 Swiftmend Wild Growth combos, or 3 normal Wild Growths. Now, the combo ones have 50% extra healing, but the other has 50% more casts, nullifying any advantage. Furthermore, talents such as Undergrowth and Thriving Growth further promote multiple casts of Wild Growth over stronger ones. Even more, a single empowered rejuvenation heals for 1.8 million and can be again extended for another 8 seconds due to another Swiftmend cast, resulting in a total healing on the tank of 2.6 million, for a total difference of almost 2 million. All the while, an empowered Wild Growth heals for 2.4 million, for an increase of 0.8 million. The numbers, the talents, the procs, the casts, everything backs up the idea of no longer casting Wild Growth after Swiftmend, although the vast majority of Druids still do. Next, the Grove Guardians. These should be cast right before or at the start of the burn phase, right after a Convoke or before a Tranquility. There is some debate still on where their most optimal use is, and I still have not seen any convincing data as to with which cooldowns to be used. Nature's Swiftness should be used as a panic button, and Symbiotic Relationship should be staying on the main tank. Next, Innervate should be cast on yourself. During its duration, it should cover a Wild Growth, an Efflorescence, some off-GCD Grove Guardians, and finally a long Tranquility cast to maximize mana savings. On that topic, there is also the promised topic of cat weaving versus Boomy. Firstly, utilizing Master Shapeshifter with a RIP grants approximately 180k mana and requires 6 GCDs, 5 builders and 1 spender, as shapeshifting is free due to fluid form. While 6 GCDs of Starfire would in theory grant the exact same amount of mana, breaking even, there are many other aspects to consider. 1. Starfire, or Wrath, consume roughly half of the mana granted. 2. Rip plus Rake plus 4 Shred casts far outdamage 6 Star Surge casts, even without considering Wallstalker procs. And 3. Casting Convoke usually generates a number of combo points, further reducing required GCDs. Overall, cat weaving has too many advantages to be ignored. I'm still unsure why this one as well is largely ignored, and Boomy is preferred. Itemization and stats. So, for the most part, Wowhead has the right information here. This season, we utilize these 4 tier pieces, and these trinkets are rather good. Overall, the idea is whatever has haste and or mastery is good. Everything else is to be thrown in the abyss. Intelligence is perhaps slightly more important, so usually items 6-10 item levels higher need to be equipped regardless of their stats. However, this becomes less true as time goes on, as intelligence is not multiplicative. Example, obtaining 10k intelligence when you possess 100k is 10% increase, while if having 200k intelligence, it is a mere 5% increase. Secondary stats have some diminishing returns due to caps, being 90% effective past 30% haste, etc. However, even if considering only the hot increases of haste, a 30% haste increase is roughly a 30% heal increase for druids, which is the same at all item levels. What this means is that earlier on, items should be equipped by item level, mostly due to health increases allowing survivability. However, haste and mastery are king, and should be sought out, or be filled with crafted items. On the topic of crafted items, disregard online piss gear. We are peelers, we get shafted on raid items and ignored like a geek in high school. Get what gear you can and fill what is left with crafted items. Embellishments usually are the stat-giving ones, such as Ascendance and Embrace the Darkness. Trinkets, again, same thing. Do not expect to see our best too soon. Just pick whatever offers stats. Macros. All of these will be in the pinned comment for easy importing. There are the standard revive and combat macros, since mouseover does not work on expired party members. The travel macro, which once pressed will shapeshift you to the fastest moving form available. A roar macro, which will also try to cast the off GCD spell Prowl in order to maximize movement between packs. Vortex and Efflorescence macros for instant placement, although I understand some people heavily dislike these. The Flourish Trinket Nature's Vigil macro, which is slightly suboptimal by 1 to 2% from a damage perspective, but all Resto Druids use it, because optimal usage requires way too much math to be done in a split second. And now for some keybind saves. I utilize some of these as I currently am having over 60 keybinds. Yeah. Welcome to Resto Druid. This is a Prowl Shred macro. When out of combat, it casts Prowl, and when in combat, it casts Shred. This is useful as Prowl cannot be cast in combat and vice versa. A Hellstone Mage Food macro in the same spirit, and that's about it. As far as Wikaras go, you require a Wikara to track rejuvenation stacks, as there are multiple sources that apply them, and manually tracking them is almost impossible. This one is the only good one I managed to find. And maybe a Wikara to track cooldowns, or maybe even the Blizzard cooldown tracker. This should contain the ones that you care about or struggle with, so I cannot recommend anything here really. Lastly, methods of improvement and priorities. Let's start with the raid. So you tried playing the class and things did not work out well. Okay, here is a list of things in order of importance that you need to fix. First, uptime. We have 15% extra movement speed and a lot of on-the-move spells. This is the easiest class to continuously cast and stay active. However, it is the most punishing should you fail. If you feel overwhelmed by the class, bind the rejuvenation and regrowth buttons to something easy to press, and always be pressing these two, until WoW Analyzer states that you are over 85% overall active. 2. Spell uptime. Swiftmend, especially due to its many procs, needs to be always cast, and always cast on someone with at least 2 rejuvenations. Wild Growth, Efflorescence, and Life Bloom are nowhere near as important, and Perfect Play may be initially ignored. 3. Convoke Flourish combo on at least 12 rejuvenations, followed by regrowths. These two are your main cooldowns because they interact with your basic spells, which represent most of your healing, unlike Tranquility. Simply following these 3 rules will net you a parse of at least 75. Probably. Healing parses are mostly dependent on the output of the other healers, not just your own performance. However, these are the most important things for a Resto Druid, which you should focus on mastering. When these are done, you may start focusing on having perfect uptime on Efflorescence and Life Bloom and proper Guardian usage just as the burn phase starts. Beyond all the previously mentioned things in the rotations, there are also a few more things to keep in mind. Rejuvenations are preferable to be cast 2 on 1 target rather than 1 each on 2 targets. Regrowths are to be prioritized on targets with pre-existing HOTS, but not regrowth HOTS. These are both due to how mastery works, but are relatively minor. Even more, casts of rejuvenation should be preferable on full health targets before a damage phase, as this ensures a longer lifetime, which in turn ensures they are present when pressing Flourish and Regrowth, further empowering your casts. Also, pre-hotting before a raid start is a thing. Having Efflorescence down and a couple of rejuvenations, and then eating mana food before the boss is pulled really saves you some time. There's also this weird bug, I'm not sure if it is intended or not, which allows you to extend your rejuvenations on the target pre-pull due to nurturing dormancy. Simply recast rejuvenations on the tank every 4 or so seconds, and you may end up with a total duration of 30 seconds. In Mythic Plus, things are a bit reversed. Having full uptime on your Life Blooms is the most important thing in the world, followed by Efflorescence second due to Wildstalker procs. If you are ever caught pants down taking damage without rejuvenations up, try and recover with a cooldown, Tranquility preferably. And if none is available, do not bother to cast rejuvenations. Instead, Swiftmend, defensives, and start casting regrowths. Cat weaving is rather complex, and honestly, hero damage is not really relevant in keys. I have a whole video on that. So, while starting out, simply cast rejuvenations at all times, as mana management in mPlus is far more forgiving. Also, a lot of people will start recommending pure damage trinkets. I assure you, increasing your damage output by 3 to 5%, which is 0.1% of total party damage, is not worth it. Do not ever bother with this, unless you are some kind of MDI player, in which case, what are you doing here? Honestly, Mythic Plus is such a wild and chaotic place that no written advice works on fixing personal problems. you need to look at your actual data and make judgment calls. Overall, this is what I have learned about Resto in the 5 years since playing this nightmare of a spec. And considering this season looks like it might be the best healer in Mythic Plus and pretty good in Raid, a lot of new Resto players will be seeking this sort of information. If there is anything I missed or got wrong, please let me know. Again, if changes appear to the class since the current patch, I will note them in the pinned comment or make an entirely new video if necessary. Here I am trying to actually do a proper rotation and heal, and then there's this rogue. Like, Blizzard, just please fix your game.